"Shut your mouth. Who do you think you are, to talk to my mother like that?" My husband's voice thundered through the room a second before his hand cracked across my face. His mother watched with a smug little smile as if she'd been waiting for this moment. But 15 minutes later, the look on his face wasn't anger, it was pure shock, and he had no idea that the next thing I did would change everything. The silence in the Maplewood apartment was a living, breathing thing. Lena Vance, at 28, had learned to listen to its composition. The soft, puff-puff rhythm of Eli's 6-month-old breaths from the nursery monitor, the arthritic groan of the building's pipes, the distant, lonely whistle of a train cutting through the suburban night. She sat on the edge of the cream-colored sofa, a gift from a past life, afraid to move. Any shift might disturb the delicate equilibrium, might summon the next need, the next cry. Her hands, resting in her lap, told a story of their own. Where there was once a delicate silver ring on her right hand, and nails kept short for sketching, there was now only dry skin and bitten cuticles. The callus on her middle finger from holding a pencil had softened, replaced by a different toughness from lifting and carrying the center of her universe. Her career as a textile designer felt like a dream belonging to another person. Her portfolio, filled with watercolor patterns of botanicals and intricate geometric prints, was buried under a stack of pediatrician pamphlets and burp cloths in the office nook. That life of client meetings in sun-drenched studios, of the smell of freshly printed fabric samples, had been paused. In its place was a profound, exhausting, beautiful project named Eli. He smelled of milk and lavender-scented wash, and his smile could erase hours of sleepless fog. The creak of the bedroom door was a violation of the quiet. Marcus stood framed in the doorway, backlit by the bathroom light. He was already dressed for the day in a shirt the color of steel, its seams knifed. He looked like a visitor, an ambassador from the world of urgency and import. He moved with a deliberate quiet to the crib, his shadow falling over the sleeping form. "Out for the count," he whispered, his voice still rough with sleep, yet already slipping into its professional tenor. Lena merely nodded, rising to join him. She felt frumpy in her worn robe beside his crispness. Finally, he fought it for an hour, just wanted to be held. Marcus leaned down and brushed his lips against her temple. The scent of him, sandalwood cologne, sharp toothpaste, and the faint, underlying note of ambition was a time machine. It instantly transported her 2 years back, to the gallery opening where they'd met. She'd been showcasing a series of textile art. He'd been a guest of the gallery's investor. He'd asked intelligent questions about her process, his gaze intense and flattering. His courtship had been a masterclass in focused attention, extravagant dates, surprise weekend getaways, promises woven into whispered conversations in the dark. He was a rising vice president at Sterling and Klein Financial. She was the artistic soul who, he said, balanced his scales. Their marriage had felt like the perfect, exciting merger. "You look exhausted," he said now, his thumb stroking the pronounced hollow under her eye. The concern in his voice was real, but it felt generic, like a line from a handbook on supportive spouses. "It's the new normal," she murmured, offering a weak smile. "Maybe you should go to your sister's this weekend. Let her spoil you. I can handle things here." His offer was textbook, too. Before she could answer, the sound of a cabinet closing with unnecessary force echoed from the kitchen. The spell of the quiet was officially broken. Marcus's expression shifted, a subtle tightening around his eyes. "Mom's up," he stated, as one might announce a change in the weather. Diana's arrival a week prior had not been a gentle integration. It had been a soft occupation. She'd arrived from her nearby condo with 3 large suitcases and an air of benevolent authority. Her help was a constant, low-grade critique delivered with a smile that didn't reach her cool blue eyes. Lena's methods were curious, her homemaking charming but haphazard, her very exhaustion a sign of not managing her time effectively. "Speaking of Mom," Marcus said, dropping his voice further, a conspiratorial tone that once felt intimate but now felt like being assigned a secret mission. "She's run out of that imported bergamot tea, the one in the blue tin. Would you mind picking some up when you take Eli out? You know how she gets about her routines." Lena did know. In 1 week, she'd learned that Diana took her tea at 10:15 a.m. precisely, required a specific brand of almond milk heated to just below and believed store-bought bread was an insult to digestion. She nodded, a familiar resignation settling in her bones. "Sure, I'll go after his morning nap." The kitchen, when she entered, was dominated by Diana's presence. She was at the stove, not cooking, but but inspecting. She wore a silk dressing gown, her silver blonde hair in an impeccable She looked like a retired ballet mistress auditing a subpar rehearsal. Good morning, dear, Diana chirped, not turning round. I was just noticing the burner on the left isn't heating evenly. You really should have the landlord look at that. Uneven flame can ruin a sauce. Good morning, Diana. I'll mention it, Lena said, moving to the coffee maker, her lifeline. And I see you're using the pre-ground coffee, Diana continued, finally turning. Her gaze was a gentle sweep that took in Lena's messy bun and faded robe. Such a shame. The beans lose all their character. I'll show you how to use the grinder Marcus bought you. It's probably still in its box. The barb landed with practiced precision. Marcus had bought her a expensive burr grinder for her birthday last year. When she'd talked about wanting to master pour-over coffee, it was, indeed, still in its box in a closet. In the chaos of newborn life, such rituals had fallen away. Now, under Diana's gaze, it felt like a personal failing. That would be great, Lena forced out, pouring the much-maligned pre-ground coffee into the filter. The days began to take on a terrible rhythm. Mornings belonged to Ely's gummy smiles, his baffled frustration with tummy time, the pure, simple joy of him. Mid-mornings, after Marcus had left with a perfunctory kiss and a cloud of his cologne, were when Diana emerged, fully dressed and ready to administer her particular brand of governance. She would straighten up, which meant rearranging furniture and moving Lena's things to inexplicable places. She would plan meals, which meant interrogating Lena about her grocery choices and sighing over the lack of offal in their diet. In my day, Diana would begin, a phrase that was the overture to every criticism. A woman knew how to stretch a budget. Organ meats, bone broths, not this avocado toast and quinoa. She'd say this while eating the avocado toast Lena had made for her. Lena's initial strategy was appeasement. She smiled tightly, bit her tongue until she tasted copper, and tried to remember Marcus's mantra. She's lonely. She just wants to feel needed. It's her way of caring. But the smoking was the line she couldn't let blur. It started subtly, a faint, stale odor in the guest bathroom in the morning, a whisper of smoke on Diana's cardigan when she came in from the balcony. Lena asked, politely at first, if she could smoke further away, maybe downstairs by the building's entrance. Oh, it's nothing, dear. Diana waved a dismissive hand. The wind carries it away. You can't wrap the child in cotton wool. A little adversity builds resilience. One afternoon, the wind did not carry it away. Lena had just settled the fussy Eli for a nap in his crib, which was near a window facing the small, concrete balcony. She cracked the window for fresh air. 10 minutes later, returning with a load of laundry, she was hit by the unmistakable, cloying scent of diadecy clove cigarette. Peering through the slats of the blinds, she saw Diana leaning on the railing, blowing a stream of smoke directly toward the open window. A red-hot wire of anger shot through Lena's fatigue. She marched to the patio door and slid it open. The sound made Diana jump, but her face quickly rearranged itself into mild annoyance. Lena, goodness, you startled me. You'll wake the baby. The smoke is going right into his room, Lena said, her voice trembling with the effort to stay calm. Diana took a long, deliberate drag, the ember glowing. Nonsense. It's a vast outdoors. It dissipates. It's not dissipating. It's coming inside. Please, Diana, for Eli's health. Smoke is terrible for infants. Diana's eyes hardened. She flicked the ash over the railing. You know, Lena, constant anxiety is terrible for infants too. They sense it. Maybe you should worry less about a little fresh air and more about creating a calm environment. She stubbed out the cigarillo on the railing, leaving a black mark, and swept past Lena back into the apartment, trailing a plume of scented smoke behind her. Lena stood there, shaking. It wasn't just the smoking. It was the invalidation, the twisting of her legitimate concern into a character flaw. She opened all the windows in the living room, the chill autumn air flooding in, trying to scour the contamination away. That night, she tried to talk to Marcus. He was on the sofa, his laptop casting a blue glow on his weary face. The football game played on mute on the TV. Marcus, we need to talk about your mom. The smoking. I caught her doing it right under Eli's window today. I asked her to stop, and she implied I was a hysterical mother. He didn't look up. His fingers tapped rapidly on the keyboard. Marcus, did you hear me? He sighed, the long, weary exhalation of a man burdened by mundane domestic squabbles. I heard you. Look, she's been smoking for 40 years. It's a hard habit. Can't you just Ask her nicely to stand at the other end of the balcony. I did. She doesn't listen. She doesn't think it's a real issue. But it is, Marcus. The pediatrician's handouts say it clearly. Increased risk of SIDS, asthma, everything. Now he looked up, his expression one of pained reasonableness. Lena, don't quote handouts at me. My mom smoked through 2 pregnancies, and my sister and I turned out fine. She's not blowing smoke in his face. The word was a slap, catastrophizing. A clinical, dismissive term that boxed her fear up and labeled it as irrational female emotion. I'm trying to protect our son, she said, her voice small. And I'm trying to keep peace in my family, he countered, closing his laptop with a definitive click. She's my mother. She's here, trying to help during a stressful time. The least you could do is be a little grateful and not pick fights over every little thing. He stood up. I'm going to bed. I have a big presentation tomorrow. He left her standing alone, in the blue-lit gloom. The chasm between them, which she had felt as a crack, now felt like a canyon. He wasn't in the middle. He was firmly on the other side, on the bank with his mother. The Cold War escalated. Lena became a detective. She found cigarette butts, not in the ashtray Diana sometimes used, but tucked behind a plant pot on the balcony, ground into the soil of her herb garden. The guest bathroom began to permanently smell of air freshener, fighting a losing battle against stale smoke. Lena bought an expensive air purifier for the nursery and ran it constantly. Diana remarked on the dreadful noise and the waste of electricity. The breaking point was physical. Eli developed a cough, not a little baby cough, but a deep, phlegmy rattle that shook his small frame. His breathing became a wheezing struggle. Terrified, Lena bundled him up and took him to the pediatric urgent care. Dr. Evans, after a thorough examination, was blunt. Lena, it's serious at this age. His airways are inflamed. Is there any exposure to smoke? Any at all? The truth tumbled out. The balcony, the hidden butts, the constant battle. Dr. Evans's face was stern. It has to stop, completely. No smoking in the home, on the balcony, near windows. If the person must smoke, they need to go off the property, change clothes, and wash hands before touching the baby. This environment is making him sick. Armed with medical authority, Lena felt a surge of defiant strength. That evening, she waited until Marcus was home. She asked Diana to join them in the living room. Eli, fussy and warm, was in her arms. We need to talk, Lena began, her voice clear. She repeated Dr. Evans's words verbatim, holding Diana's gaze. So, from now on, there is to be no smoking anywhere on the apartment property. If you need to smoke, Diana, you'll have to go down to the street. The silence was profound. Marcus looked stunned. Diana's face underwent a fascinating transformation, from shock to outrage to a mask of profound, wounded dignity. I see, Diana said quietly, her voice quivering with theatrical hurt. So now I am not only a nuisance, but a toxic presence, a danger to my own grandson. She placed a hand over her heart. Mom, no one's saying that, Marcus began automatically, but Diana cut him off with a look. She is, Marcus. Your wife is saying I am a danger. After I gave up my peace, came here to cook and clean and help. She let a single, perfect tear trace a path down her powdered cheek. I suppose my help is no longer wanted, or needed. Diana, it's not about your help, Lena tried. It is exactly about my help. Diana's voice sharpened, the tears vanishing. You don't want it. You never did. You see me as an intrusion. Well, you have made your position abundantly clear. She stood, drawing herself up to her full, imposing height. I will not stay where I am considered a blight. Mom, don't be silly. Of course you're not. Marcus was on his feet, panicked. It's all right, son, she said, placing a martyred hand on his arm. I understand. I'll start packing. She walked regally to the guest room and closed the door. Marcus whirled on Lena, his face flushed with anger. Are you happy now? You've kicked my mother out, over a little cough. A little cough that is a respiratory infection. Lena shot back, holding Eli closer. The doctor said, I don't care what the doctor said. She's my mother. And you've made her feel like a criminal in her son's home. He was shouting now. Eli, startled, began to wail. Her son's home. This is our home, Marcus, mine and yours, and Eli. And his health comes before her feelings. Lena was shouting too, the weeks of pent-up frustration and exhaustion boiling over. His health is fine. You're just looking for a reason to push her out because you're jealous. Jealous of our relationship. The accusation was so absurd, so vile, that Lena fell silent, staring at him. In that silence, something in Marcus seemed to snap. He took a step toward her, his finger jabbing the air near her face. You will go in there, and you will apologize. You will tell her she can smoke wherever she damn well pleases, and you will be grateful for her presence. Do you understand me? The man before her was a stranger. His eyes, usually so focused and confident, were wide with a kind of furious panic. This wasn't about logic or health. This was about a primal, childish loyalty being threatened. No, Lena whispered. What did you say? I said no. Her voice grew stronger. I will not apologize for protecting our child, and I will not let her poison this air anymore. His hand, the one that had held hers during her labor, that had cradled Eli's head with such wonder, clenched into a fist at his side. For a terrifying second, she thought he would use it. Instead, he swung it sideways, not at her, but at the side table, next to the sofa. A lamp, a wedding gift from her sister, crashed to the floor, the ceramic base shattering into 100 pieces. Fine, he roared, spittle flying. Have it your way. You want to be the boss? You want to run my mother off? Then you can deal with everything. You and your precious baby. He stormed past her, grabbed his keys and wallet from the console table, and slammed the front door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. In the sudden, shocking quiet, broken only by Eli's hiccuping sobs and the hum of the nursery air purifier, Lena sank to the floor amidst the ceramic shards. She held her son, rocking him, her own tears falling silently. She had won the battle, but the war, she realized, had just revealed its true, ugly nature. And her husband was not her ally. He was the enemy's commanding officer. Marcus didn't come home that night. He sent a text at 1 a.m., staying at a hotel. Need space. Diana, miraculously, did not emerge from her room. The apartment was a tomb. The next day, Marcus returned in the morning, grim-faced. He packed a suitcase without looking at Lena. I'm taking Mom to her place. She's too upset to stay here. We'll be back tonight to talk. They left. The apartment felt enormous and empty. Lena used the reprieve to finally cry, great heaving sobs of grief and rage. Then she called her father. Ben Vance answered on the second ring, his voice a deep, steady rumble. Pumpkin, what's wrong? Just hearing his nickname for her unlocked the floodgates again. She told him everything, in a messy, disjointed rush. The smoking, the doctor, the fight, the shattered lamp, Marcus's abandonment. Ben listened without interruption. When she finished, breathless and spent, he said only 3 words, I'm coming over. He lived an hour away. He was there in 45 minutes, letting himself in with the spare key she'd given him. He took one look at her swollen eyes and the wreckage of the lamp, then opened his arms. Lena fell into them, the solid, reliable bulk of him, the first truly safe thing she'd felt in weeks. All right, he said, his voice vibrating in his chest. All right. First things first, where's my grandson? Eli, soothed by the new.com presence, allowed himself to be cuddled by his grandfather. Ben walked him around the apartment, murmuring in his low voice, while Lena made tea with hands that still shook. Over the steaming mugs, Ben laid out a simple, soldier's plan. You're not staying here tonight. You're packing a bag for you and Eli and coming home with me. To my house. We'll figure out the rest from a position of safety. But Marcus, he said he's coming back to talk. Let him talk to an empty apartment, Ben said, his jaw set. He lost the right to a conversation when he chose to terrorize his wife and child instead of protecting them. Pack, now. The authority in his voice was something she hadn't realized she needed. She moved numbly, packing diapers, clothes, Eli's favorite sleep sack. As she was in the nursery, she heard the front door open. Marcus's voice, tense, called out, Lena. Ben stepped into the hallway. She's in here. Marcus appeared, his expression shifting from anxiety to surprise to defensiveness when he saw Ben. Ben, what are you doing here? Taking my daughter and grandson somewhere safe, Ben said, his tone flat, leaving no room for argument. Safe. What's that supposed to mean? This is their home. A home where the father smashes things and abandons his family in the middle of the night. Ben's voice was dangerously quiet. That's not a home. That's a battlefield. And she's withdrawing from the field. Marcus looked past Ben to Lena, who stood in the nursery doorway, Eli on her hip. Lena, don't be ridiculous. We need to talk about this. Like adults. We tried talking. Marcus, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. You left. You chose your mother's comfort over your son's health. There's nothing left to talk about. So that's it. You're just leaving. Running to Daddy. His sneer was ugly. Ben took a step forward. his presence suddenly filling the hallway. Watch your tone, son. You've done enough damage. Lena and Eli are leaving with me. You want to talk? You can have your lawyer call hers. The word lawyer hung in the air like a thunderclap. Marcus paled. Lawyer, you can't be serious. This is a marital spat. Marital spats don't involve destruction of property and threats, Ben said, picking up the overnight bag Lena had packed. Come on, pumpkin. Lena walked past Marcus, not looking at him. He reached out, grabbing her arm. Lena, wait please. She stopped, looking down at his hand on her arm, then up into his eyes. She saw panic there now, real panic. The panic of a man realizing the furniture he's been kicking has suddenly gotten up and walked out the door. Let go of me, Marcus. He did. His hand fell away, as if burned. She followed her father out of the apartment, down the elevator, and into the crisp certainty of the autumn afternoon. She didn't look back. As Ben's sturdy sedan pulled away from the curb, she felt the strangest sensation, a profound, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of freedom. The trap was sprung, and she was outside of it. The next few days at her father's small, tidy house were a blur of emotional whiplash. One moment she would feel fierce and righteous, scrolling through websites for divorce attorneys on her laptop while Eli napped. The next, a wave of grief would knock her sideways, grief for the man she thought she'd married, for the future they'd planned, for the simple, shattered normalcy of her life. She cried in the shower. She cried into her pillow at night. Ben never tried to stop her. He just made sure there was a hot meal and a strong cup of coffee waiting when she emerged. Marcus bombarded her phone. His messages ran the gamut. Angry. You're overreacting. You're tearing this family apart. Pleading. Lena, I'm sorry. I was stressed. Come home. We can fix this. Manipulative. Eli needs his father. Don't do this to him. Threatening. If you think you can keep my son from me, you're mistaken. I'll fight you in court. After the threat, Ben took her phone. Enough. You're not a punching bag for his emotions. We're getting you a new number tomorrow. All communication goes through the lawyer. They found Sandra Voss through a friend of Ben's from his old police precinct. Sandra was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a demeanor that was both warm and utterly unflinching. In her sun-filled office, Lena told the story again, this time in chronological order, with dates and details. She showed Sandra the text messages. She mentioned the shattered lamp. And prior to this incident, was there ever any physical intimidation? Shoving, blocking your way, throwing things? Sandra asked, her pen poised. Lena thought back. There was the time he'd slammed his hand on the kitchen table so hard during an argument about money that her glass of water had jumped. The time he'd grabbed her wrist to stop her from leaving a room, his grip just a shade too tight. She'd dismissed them as moments of high emotion. Now, under Sandra's clinical gaze, they formed a pattern. Yes, she said quietly, a few times. Sandra nodded, making a note. We'll file for a temporary restraining order based on the recent incident and the history. It will give you exclusive use of the marital residence and set temporary custody and support until the divorce is settled. Given the child's age and the circumstances, we have a very strong position. The word divorce, spoken aloud in this professional context, made it real in a new way. It was no longer an emotional threat. It was a legal process, a path forward. Marcus, served with the restraining order and divorce papers, went from threatening to desperate. His new lawyer, a slick man named Covington, contacted Sandra. They wanted to mediate. They wanted to avoid a messy court battle. They offered a generous settlement. Lena could have the apartment, a sizable lump sum, more than standard child support. Sandra was skeptical. It's too good. They're scared. The restraining order and the domestic violence allegation, even based on property destruction and intimidation, looks bad for him, especially in a custody dispute. He's a finance guy. Image is everything. He wants this to go away quietly. What should I do? Lena asked. We press forward. We use their fear. We get everything you're entitled to, not just what they're offering to make you go away. And we get it in a binding agreement. During this time, Lena began to tentatively reclaim parts of herself. With Ben watching Eli, she unearthed her old sketchbook and watercolors. At first, her hands felt clumsy, the colors muddy, but slowly, the muscle memory returned. She started drawing again, not for a client, but for herself. Intricate, curling patterns that felt like protective talismans. She drew a forest of thorns with a single, perfect rose in the center. She drew a phoenix, half in ashes, half in flame. She also began to see Marcus's behavior with a new, painful clarity. His need for control, his deference to his mother, his volatility when challenged, they hadn't appeared out of nowhere. They'd been there, woven into the fabric of their relationship, but she'd been too in love, too eager to please, to see them as warning flags. She'd mistaken intensity for passion, and stubbornness for strength. The final legal meeting was held in Sandra's conference room. Marcus was there with Covington. He looked thinner, older, his confidence replaced by a nervous tension. He wouldn't meet Lena's eyes. The agreement Sandra had negotiated was comprehensive. Lena would have primary physical custody of Eli. Marcus would have supervised visitation initially, transitioning to a standard schedule contingent on completing a parenting and anger management program. The apartment would be sold, and Lena would receive 60% of the equity, reflecting her contribution to its maintenance and the need to establish a new home for Eli. Spousal support for 3 years, generous child support, and Marcus would cover all of Eli's health insurance and extracurricular costs. Covington argued a few points half-heartedly, but it was clear his client's instruction was to sign and end it. Marcus scrawled his signature on the last page with a hand that shook slightly. As they were gathering their things, Marcus finally spoke to her directly, his voice low. "Lena, I am sorry for everything." She looked at him, this man who had been her husband, the father of her child. She felt no hatred, only a vast, empty pity. The love was gone, scraped out completely. "I know you are," she said, "but sorry doesn't fix it. Just be a good father to Eli. That's all that matters now." He nodded, a jerky movement, and looked away, his eyes bright. Walking out of the building with Sandra, the winter sun was bright and weak. "It's done," Sandra said, squeezing her arm. "You start your new life today." The sale of the apartment was swift. With her share of the equity and the security provided by the support, Lena didn't rent. She bought a small, 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood known for its artists and young families. It had huge north-facing windows that flooded the space with perfect, clear light. The second bedroom she set up as a nursery studio, with Eli's crib in one corner and her drafting table in the other. She slowly rebuilt her career. She reached out to old contacts, showing them her new work, the talisman patterns, now refined into a collection she called Resurgence. The raw emotion in them resonated. She landed a contract with the boutique home decor company. The work was fulfilling in a way it had never been before. It was hers, born from her survival. Months passed. Eli grew into a toddling, cheerful little boy with his father's dark hair and her thoughtful gray eyes. Marcus's visits were, by court order, initially at a family center with a supervisor. He was awkward, overly formal with Eli, as if interacting with a tiny foreign diplomat. As time went on and he moved to unsupervised visits, he became more relaxed, but a distance remained. Lena heard from a mutual acquaintance that he had moved back in with Diana temporarily. The news brought no satisfaction, only a confirmation of the dynamic that had ultimately doomed them. One bright Saturday in early spring, Lena was at the neighborhood playground. Eli was laboriously climbing the steps to a small slide, his face a mask of concentration. A little girl, about 4, with riotous red curls, zoomed past him and shot down the slide with a whoop. Her father, a tall man with kind eyes and a worried expression, called out, "Chloe, slow down, remember the rules." The little girl, Chloe, ignored him, already running back to the ladder. She and Eli reached the bottom step at the same time. They stared at each other for a moment, two small humans negotiating an unspoken treaty. The man, seeing the potential for conflict, hurried over. "Sorry," he said to Lena, offering an apologetic smile. "She's a force of nature. Chloe, wait your turn. Let the little boy go first." Eli, however, seemed fascinated by Chloe. He took a wobbly step back and made a grand, sweeping, after-you gesture with his whole arm, a move he must have seen on TV. It was so absurdly gentlemanly that Lena laughed. The man laughed too, a warm, genuine sound. "Well, thank you, sir," he said to Eli, then extended his hand to Lena. "I'm Daniel, and the hurricane is Chloe. Lena, and the tiny diplomat is Eli." They stood together, watching their children navigate the social complexities of the sandbox. The conversation was easy, flowing from parenting war stories to favorite neighborhood coffee shops. Daniel was an architect, a widower. He spoke of his wife with a gentle, enduring sadness that wasn't a wall, but an open door to his character. He listened when Lena mentioned she worked from home as a designer, his questions thoughtful and insightful. When it was time to level, I was getting cranky. Chloe had discovered a fascinating mud puddle. Daniel hesitated. This might be forward, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. But there's a really good pizza place a few blocks from here. Thick crust, not too greasy. Maybe you and Eli would like to join me and Chloe sometime. No pressure. Just, if you're free. Lena looked at him, at his open, hopeful face, so different from the polished intensity she was used to. She looked at Eli, now happily chewing on the strap of his overalls. She felt no anxiety, no rush, only a quiet curiosity. I think we'd like that, she said, smiling. We'd like that very much. As she buckled Eli into his stroller and began the walk home, the late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows. The air smelled of damp earth and blossoming trees. She thought of the signed divorce decree in her filing cabinet, the new contract on her desk, the quiet strength of her father's Sunday phone calls, and the simple, promising exchange of phone numbers with Daniel. The path behind her was littered with shattered ceramic and the ashes of a failed marriage, but for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't looking back. She was looking forward, at a wide, sun-dappled path that was hers alone to walk, her son's small hands securely in hers. The future was no longer a frightening blank page. It was a fresh sketchbook, waiting for her to draw her own, beautiful, resilient design.